put in what library you're from in the chat. We'll get started here and actually right now. Thank you everybody for joining us for the digital design marketing webinar. I'm really happy today. We have Greg Hodgson and Melissa Arnold. And Greg is the founder of digital education consultancy, Edge Gain Ltd. He leads the team that creates dynamic educational events and produce online courses in digital design for clients including Adobe Systems and the Design Museum for more than 75,000 global learners in more than 120 countries. With years of experience as a teacher and a school leader, Greg became convinced of the potential of digital technology for unleashing student creativity, engaging the disengaged, fixing the skills gap, and significantly challenging the current educational status quo. Working closely with multinational companies, museums, exam boards, and government bodies, Edge Gain has developed pioneering courses which successfully blend virtual learning, industry expertise, and outstanding teaching. Greg was deputy head at a pupil referral unit for challenging young people where student engagement is critical. Greg regularly advises, presents, and trains on best ways to implement digital learning in and beyond the classroom. He is an Adobe education leader, which is where I met him and learned about him. And Melissa Arnold is an instructional designer who loves all things technology and believes that we should never stop learning. She has been working with Greg at Edge Gain since October of 2017. Before she started her work with Edge Gain, she was an IT manager and technology trainer in higher education. While originally from Germany, she relocated to Texas in 2007. Thank you so much, Greg and Melissa, for presenting for us today, and I'll turn it over to you.
I will leave Melissa to start us off.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here today. Thank you, Melanie. Appreciate you and your time. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone. I want this one. All right. Can everyone see a set of slides? Perfect. Thank you, Greg. Okay. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about infographics. And well, we also have some upcoming webinars that we want to make sure you guys know about. So that's why they're on our first page right there. So make sure you check those out. Come join us for those as well. For today, here's what we're going to do. This is kind of our outline for today. We're going to talk about a little bit of background information. So what's an infographic? Why should you use them? What makes a good one? Greg is going to then take us to the wonderful world of Adobe Spark Post and show us how to quickly create an infographic through the use of templates, which can be super awesome if you are in a hurry, especially, and need to create something very quickly that looks great. After we do some Spark Post, we are going to go ahead and dive into Adobe Illustrator. And there, I'm going to go ahead and show you some tools to make an infographic with Illustrator. It'll be some kind of tips and tricks, and I'll show you a finished one. And I will show you how I will show you the tools I use to get to that. We're not going to build the whole thing just for the sake of time, but we'll give you tools to do it, and then we'll show you some extra things. And at the end, we'll take a couple questions. I do have several screens, and I try to keep track of chat as I'm going, and I try to answer questions as I'm going. If I miss something, I apologize, but we'll do our best. Okay, so what is an infographic? And why should I or why should you use one? Feel free to put some thoughts in the chat. We would love to make this, you know, a little interactive as much as we can. So, I mean, what do you think is an infographic? You know, I think in its simplest definition, it is a visual representation of information or data. Yes, perfect. And that's perfect graphic that conveys information. And It makes a point or tells a story. It conveys information. It can have illustrations. It can have symbols, maps, diagrams, charts, text. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer necessarily. Yes, visuals providing information, perfect. So to me, an infographic is also everything is coming together to communicate information in a simple and clear way. Have you ever read a big block of text that contained a bunch of numbers and data, and you're reading it and you're going, what did I just read? What? Well, especially those things, we can take them apart and we can actually put those in an infographic to make them easily digestible. So why should you use one? Well, there you have a reason right there. Greg.
I think, Melissa, just before we move on, the other thing to consider is how much data we are consuming and expected to consume. And I think, as far as I know, and again, the librarians amongst us might need to point me in the right direction here, but I imagine you are using lots of data and you are having to tell not just simplified stories, but create stories around data that that kind of make sense for people. And I think infographics, like the most basic infographics, pie charts, for example, right the way through to, we'll look at some examples now, but very beautiful graphics to help us tell stories and to understand essentially key data sets. So yeah, lots. In fact, I was going to ask one question, Melissa, just before we go on. I was going to ask the the librarians, do they currently use infographics in their practice? Is it a skill that they are being asked that their clients, I don't know if the people they're working with, are requiring and requesting? Generally interested to know if currently you or your clientele use infographics. Annual reports, yeah. Okay. All right, that's good. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so
interject real quick. I think that libraries are kind of at the beginning of using infographics. I think some use them really well, and I think a lot of there's just like you said, there's so much information that we need to. It's a request, I think, that's really growing and a need that's really growing, and it definitely provides an easy way to portray the information. So for sure, the need is growing.
awesome. Yes, thank you. Absolutely. So definitely, helps break down that dense content, and it really helps promote visual literacy as well. And it's oftentimes just simply more engaging than a block of text, because even as adults, we like pictures. So keep those things in mind. Let's kind of keep going. So like we just talked about, an infographic is a visual medium. So when you're building yours, there's a couple things you should keep in mind. And this, of course, is not everything, but it's kind of the most important, what we want you to think about when you're doing this. So one of the things to think about is your layout, the position and structure of your visual elements and your text. You don't want a whole bunch of clutter. You don't want a whole bunch of things overlapping and then going, oh, what does that say? The hierarchy of information, is there anything that you want your viewer's eyes to be drawn to first? If not, that's okay. But if there is something, then we should probably find a way to make that stand out. Grids. So think of things like symmetry or rule of thirds. This one here on screen, you can see it actually pretty much has grids drawn into it. So it gives us a nice separation and just lays out everything very nicely. Excuse me. Visual balance. So you probably don't want all your information super heavily on one side and then a blank page on the other side. So make sure it's visually balanced. Negative space, also called a white space. So that's your space around the content. So you'll see even here, there's some space. It's not overly cluttered. Sometimes less is more. The white space also helps kind of guide the reader's eyes in a way, because then you know where to go. All right, color. So color can be used for a couple of things. It can be used for emphasis. Colors should, you know, complement one another in a way. They shouldn't be super clashy and hurt to look at. So what I mean is you don't want to put like a dark blue text on a black background. That's going to be really hard to read. If you're like me and you sometimes go, oh my goodness, I don't know what color to make this, I will show you a way in Illustrator later that will actually kind of guide you with that, because sometimes it's hard. There's so many colors available and it's just hard sometimes. All right.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Just before we shift on from there, there's I mean, there's many rules, design rules that you can know and break, and that are super complex. The general guidance that I give students, and have done for years and years, is that, you know, reduce, reduce, reduce. And what that kind of means is think about the intention of your graphic, your infographic. What is it you're trying to communicate? And is there anything that's superfluous to that mission? To the point that you might go too far. But that would be as you start to play with design, when you start to think about the hierarchy, the layout, particularly, I think something that I notice in people who are new to design, and certainly new to infographics, is that the negative space, so the information around either the words or the graphics or the color, is quite luxurious. So that's that whole idea of less is more. And one of the things that I see again and again and again in new designers is the kind of immediacy to fill all the spaces up. So really think about how, and also test it. You know, everything we talk about now needs testing. Get somebody who might be part of your audience to test it and ask them. Don't tell them what they're looking at, but what is it you see here, and what do you read first, and which bits do you understand immediately? Because then you can kind of reiterate and figure out if that design needs to be updated or tweaked in some way or other.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you, Greg. All right. So here we have two infographics. I mean, what makes a good infographic? Well, there's more than just those three things. Greg just told us a couple of them. But these are three good ones to keep in mind. So when we talk about appeal, it should be appealing to the target audience in both content and visual design. So make sure you know your audience and you know, make it appealing to them. Comprehension, that goes back to the whole, you know, taking a big block of text apart and making sure that we're understanding it, you know, even before we put it in that infographic, because we need to make sure that we know what we're building. So make sure you know what you're building, and then also make sure that it's being put together in a way that is comprehensible for your audience. Retention. So make sure the information that is presented is memorable. In fact, having, like Greg just said, having someone come look at it, not tell them what they're looking at, but just going, hey, what do you see? What do you think about this? I think that's a really good place. Yes, Melanie. So why don't you, what do you think about these two infographics? Which one of these is more effective, and why is it more effective? What are your thoughts? Greg, how do you feel? You know.
Well, I'm going to go in and we're going to look at how to create the one on the left, or work something like that. I think what's great about the one on the right is that you've probably managed to break every design rule there is, and it's just hard to read. It's really hard to read. It still works to some extent. It still tells me the key information that I need to know. I just have to work harder at it. I also then, so again, in terms of, if I was feeding back to you as a design student or a designer about this, if you were, you know, coming to me from an agency, for example, the two key things that kind of make me sort of slightly sad are the very negative image that you've created of somebody with a bowl. Because that's, you know, that's not necessary. Maybe it is in Florida, but I don't think it is. I think you know, that's a cliche. And I think one of the things that we often want to avoid with good design are cliches. So you've kind of created a set of assumptions that in that little logo, the little person with their head down. And also below that, I think the best or worst, the best worst part of this is underneath that's the text that's kind of like, I can't even see with my eyesight, but it's like a pinky color on top of a yellowy color. I've no idea if it's important. I can't read it. And then sort of less important, but still difficult, are all the different fonts that you're using. And I'm thinking, I don't know which one's an important font, which one's a friendly font. You've got all kinds of serif and sans serif fonts, different types of fonts that make me sort of feel fuzzy and nice, but also confused about whether they're serious or not. So, so that's the one on the right. So I'm going to give you probably 2 out of 10 for that, Melissa. I think that's, okay. You know, lots of improvements to make. The benefit, on the positive side, you are using that data to tell a story, and you can kind of find the story there. The one on the left hand side, I think, is balanced. It's not perfect. There's a couple of things here that I'm not 100% sure about, but in a minute I will jump in and show you how I basically took this from a template and made this in like 5 or 10 minutes. So, you know, it's not going to be perfect, but what it does allow us to do, I think one of the big problems is that when I look at this for a second time, the scale of the student graduate heads actually doesn't suggest a data set. It's an imagined data set. So I do worry, I don't feel, does everyone know what I mean by that? Like on the southeast coast, is that Miami? Is Miami down there somewhere? Perhaps there are lots of students, and perhaps up on the Panhandle part where there's a tiny little head, there's less students who are homeless. But the truth of the matter is that I've just sort of tried to balance those to show that this is about a Florida-wide set of data. So, I'd be interested to know what other people think. I can see that Ramona, you've picked out the white on the yellow is illegible. But is there anything else about either of these that anybody feels is good or not good, is helpful? I spent quite a lot of time choosing the student image on the top left. That was quite hard because, you know, I wasn't deep enough into the data to know about whether these were older students or younger students. So I was a little unsure there if I was being representative. Well, yeah, Melanie is saying stressing using the letter size. Yeah, I mean, I've got like a headline at the very top. There's a headline, and that's like the core message, and then the data is supporting that story.
And that's one of the things that's better in yours as well, is we know what this is about.
Yeah. Versus
the one on the other side, we're kind of searching, going, wait, is it about this? I think so.
Yeah. And actually in Spark, these are all very easy things to do. So I have to say, the very on the orangey one, the very lowest text box, it is sort of a bit of luck, really, that you know, I would hope you'd come away from this knowing that in the past decade, this is a much bigger issue. It's a tripled issue. And the fact that is growing, it sort of emphasizes the message that's in the words as well. I don't want to read too much into it, but that was the idea behind it. One thing, Melissa, that I do think, if I was going along with the reduce option, is, do people recognize that immediately as Florida? That's one that's, you know, without the words at the top that say Florida, if I took homelessness in Florida away, would people recognize that shape as Florida? I found various icons to use that were more detailed than that. And I know it doesn't really look like any other state, but I just wondered if that was clear enough. And the other thing that I don't know if it's completely necessary is the compass, the north, south, east, and west. So it kind of just adds to the feel of the geographic location, is what I was thinking. Melanie likes it. Okay. Any other thoughts, guys, before we shoot on and sort of jump into anything else, Melissa, that we wanted to mention there?
No, but hold on. So Ramona, I think that's just we're not signifying that with with these graduate heads. It just happened. Greg just placed them that way.
Yeah, I think again, it would be a great way to, I mean, that would be a much higher level use of data visualization, would be to start looking at there's X thousand, tens of thousands students in this area as opposed to this area. This was very much I have 10 minutes to produce something, because I'm imagining that's, you know, you won't have days or hours to do these things. And the idea is that, can I quickly create this even off my phone? I tried to do it off my phone. It's a little bit harder on my phone, but it's possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, spot on, Ramon.
Yes. All right. Greg, do you want to do your thing?
Yeah, let me see if I can share my screen, and I will take over. You cannot start screening.
Melanie has to do the privileges thing first.
Okay. So I'm just waiting to.
You should be
so
set, I think.
I could do it. Here you go. Do you want to continue? Let's see what happens.
Did you get it?
Any good? How's that?
There we go. Yes.
Okay, so Melissa will show you towards the end. We've created some resources to take away. We've got a Spark page here, but I'm going to jump in to Adobe Spark, and I'll go right back to the beginning, and then we're going to have a look at this. So Adobe Spark is it's an app. It's an app. So Adobe have a bunch of free apps. It's Spark Post, which we're going to look at for the infographic, is both an iOS and an Android app. I believe the other Spark apps the Android versions are coming, so I'm told. What you're looking at in front of you at the moment is the desktop version. So hopefully you can see I'm on Google Chrome. You could be on any browser, as far as I know. This is the home page. This is spark.adobe.com. All I need is, you can see I'm signed in, is an Adobe ID. So an Adobe ID is a free ID. Anybody can have an Adobe ID. So you sign up, and I think the easiest way is that when you first go to Spark, it will just ask you if you want to log in via Google or Facebook or set up your own Adobe ID. So it's a very easy entry, low barrier access to get into this. I did hear an amazing piece of information yesterday with the product manager who we work with at Adobe, that 18 million students worldwide are now using Spark. And that's, I don't know how long Spark has been around, but it's like 2 years or something. So this is a new tool that is growing and changing and developing and becoming more and more important. And you'll see why, I think. Number one, because it's free, which is always good. And we like free things. But two, it's actually quite powerful. So let me give you a very quick overview here. You can see I can hit create a project. There are 3 types of Spark, by the way. I'm not going to go into all 3. We may well be coming back with more webinars, and we might be able to look at the other 2 parts. But essentially, this will create graphics, it will create video, and it will create pages, web pages. Now, web page different to a website because it's one parallax scrolling page. It can be pretty much as long as you want, and it's something that I think you've created a page, Melissa, already for everybody, so we can share that. People can see what it is. But they all work nicely in conjunction with each other. So I've signed in. I'm ready to go. I'm going to go and look at my projects. I've got hundreds and hundreds of projects. I've been teaching this recently to a group of 8-year-olds in Birmingham. I don't know if Peaky Blinders is a big thing in the US, but they've got that brilliant accent. Bangladeshi children in central Birmingham, in England, not in the States, who really didn't need much showing. They just jumped straight into this and started kind of clicking and clicking and going for it. One of the things I would say that's great about Spark is that everything is remixable. And that's a really, really important key consideration. If you're not a designer, if you haven't got much time, and if you want to produce something super quick. So if you do, at the moment, I'm in my projects. You can see I've got a self-in infographics project, but I've also got, I've got various different projects for various different training sessions and things. And if I scroll down, you'll see all the big mess that is all my other projects that are either pages, etc. I would probably use this. So here's one I made earlier, just over here, 78.3 million. That's a UN Sustainable Development Goal. This was a course that we were running on the Adobe Education Exchange. Again, just getting people to consider how important information can be brought into a story and thinking about that balance between images and text. But I'm going to stick with the program and go to my self-in folder. And you'll see in here that I've got 3 sort of versions. So this is another really important tip before I jump in and make something, is that within each component, because everything that I'm doing is online now, and it's on the browser, it can be exported and saved onto my desktop. But at the same time, it's very easy to click these buttons and duplicate. And I was working with a group of engineering students on Friday who kept making very beautiful pieces of work, but they were saving over the top of each other. So they only ended up with 1 or 2 examples. And I was trying to explain to them that don't forget to create your example. You love it, then duplicate it and make another one. So you can start tweaking. And then if you're unsure, that thing I was talking about testing is showing people examples. So the way that I actually did this was that I went in and found an example. I'll show you some of those examples that are already set. There's thousands and thousands of templates. And this is the template. And I just scrolled through. I was just scrolling through the infographics templates. And I thought, this looks great. I really like it. This helps me build something very, very quickly. It's got various elements. So let me just run through what they are. I will show you how I went about creating something like this. And then I'll leave you to go away and perhaps sign up to Spark and have a go at doing it. So the first thing is, I'm just going to move my video stream so I can see the tools, is that as soon as I click on anything, it's responsive. So notice on the right-hand side, as I click on the graphic of the flame or the compass, or if I click away, clicking away is an important tool, you can see that the design panel on the right-hand side changes. Okay, so that's important. I can go and just click on any of these variations, by the way, and I'll do that in a second. And it will take that design and apply it to my content. So I don't quite want to do that just yet because I want to keep this just for now. I can create as many elements as I want to. So for example, if I just focus now on the fact that this isn't the content, this wasn't the title that I wanted a title about homelessness in students. I could take that title and simply by clicking on the text, I've now got my text. So I can go in, I can change my text. And once I've done, it will change my text. If I go into a graphic, I can I go into my graphic. I could go in and just resize my graphic. I can move my graphic into place. I can start to shift my graphic around. What I can't do is change every single pixel. So for designers or people who are working at a slightly higher level, this would be quite frustrating. But actually for people with very little time and who want to produce something quite quickly and easily, this is a brilliant tool. And I think the point of us showing you this first and then looking at Illustrator would allow you to negotiate where you sit and how you want to use. I know Illustrator really pretty well. We do quite a lot of graphic design work. I will literally jump into Spark at some points when I want to throw something together quite quickly. So let's just go down here and choose something else. Let's have a look. I've got primary colors, secondary colors. I can change the size. So everything is kind of scrollable and movable. I've got a bunch of different fonts. I can add fonts if I want to. If I go to the very top, I can add all kinds of different fonts to this. So as I go through, I can choose the different fonts that I want to use, the different colors. I've got pretty much control of all the different elements, but let's just say, for example, that this wasn't about fires, it was about homelessness. At the top here, I've got the edit option. I've got the duplicate option. So if I wanted another flame, it'd be very easy to just duplicate that flame and start to make balance happen. I could delete that piece as well. So that's all very easy. And sometimes it was a little bit slow to catch up with me there. One last thing I want to show you, and then Melissa, actually two things very quickly. My favorite part is to add icons, and I think icons become brilliant stories. This is from the helpful elements of stories. This is from the noun project, which is something like 50,000, 90,000 nouns that you have to pay for outside of Spark, but they're free within Spark. And I just want to show you what a librarian looks like inside Spark. So you've got thousands of opportunities to find different things. So here you go, I'll drag this one in. You can see, oops, I don't need to drag it, just click on it. And it will pick up that color. So I can start to experiment and explore how I might use these in the way that I want to. Let me just shoot across to my projects, which are here, and just show you the one that we created. And hopefully, unless anyone's got any questions, that might give you a bit of a heads up. So I was back in Self-In. The other thing that's happened recently in Spark is that I can now share these easily. I can basically invite people in. So if I wanted to take my Florida homelessness piece, I can just share that. I can invite you to have a copy of that. So it becomes very easy. Also, I can download it here as a PNG. So a PNG, JPEG, 2 graphic files, or even a PDF. I think the PDF only works with Adobe, with Google Chrome. I'm not 100% sure. But that is simply a case of hitting that download button, and that then becomes a graphic in my downloads folder. And I think you can see there that I can move all these parts around. I can undo them all, Command Z, or undo redo at the top. The last thing, Melissa, is I think to say, because I'll let people go and play, is that if I click away, I can resize this. And as I scroll through the resize, you'll see that I could resize this for an Eventbrite, for an Etsy card. Pretty much every social media opportunity is there. So I can go and do that. If I just click on it, it will take the assets and move them around into a format that is perfect for Facebook, for Instagram, or for absolutely any custom size that you might need. So if you think about that, by creating your first graphic, duplicating it, and then changing it, you can create a campaign really, really quickly. You can create a whole social media campaign, a printable campaign, etc. Anyway, as ever, Melissa, I talk too much, so I'm going to stop there and just see if there are any questions. And I'm not sure if I've got, you might have to tell me if there are, because I've lost my...
There's a question about, can we use it to create a flyer 8x10?
Yeah. So absolutely, you would go in and just create So let me very quickly show you. Go into the resize element, or when you first set it up, you would create the size that you want, but you could go in and you would just choose, I think it's right at the top, your custom size. You could do it in pixels, millimeters, or inches. So you could just change that to 8 by 10, hit done. That's probably the first thing you do, and then create from there. So that's a really cool feature. That works really, really well. Any other questions before I jump out and hand this back? And then we look at Illustrator.
There was something about branding, and I think you actually have to use your like library branding. You have to have an Adobe Creative Suite account. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there are two types. There's the free version of this and the paid version. The paid version, and I'll be totally honest, I'm not sure. All schools in education. So I'm not sure where libraries sit, but it's worth asking the question, and I can come back to you, Melanie, and tell you. All schools and education get the branded version for free. And what that means, if I click here on my brand, is that it asks you for a color. So my Edge Gain, I just put in the hexadecimal color of my company, of my logo. I've dropped in my logo, and I've dropped in the font that I use. They are the three components: color, logo, and font. And then immediately, if you look as I scroll through, it gives me light, dark, and medium options. But it also allows me, if I see all, you'll see immediately it's throwing Facebook posts together. Now, again, I might not really like any of these, but they might be good starting points for when I want to jump in there and start hacking them and tweaking them and adding my own content. Super quick. It's just a really quick and efficient tool. That's okay.
I have another question. Can it be used with something like Google Sites, like if you wanted to make a website?
Yeah, yes, you could use the graphics from this to go into Google Sites. I will quickly show you. If you hit Create a Project, you've got all sorts of options here. The one thing that I would look at is a web page, which is different to Google Sites. And this is where you will create, well, let me just show you. I'll steal Melissa's thunder and she'll show you this again. But as I scroll up, this is purely images and graphics and links and video, all just placed in the sequence that you want people to look at them. So what I'm scrolling through now is an Adobe Spark page, and it's shareable, and it's all hosted. All of this is hosted. That's one thing I didn't show you here, was that it's hosted on the Adobe Cloud. And so I can send direct links into my Facebook stream or whatever.
So Greg, let me clarify. When you create Spark pages, those can be put on a web page as part of, and it's just a link that basically comes up the way you're doing that, or is it something different than that?
It's something different to that. What it is its own unique page. So of course you can connect pages with pages, but that isn't the idea. The idea here is that you would create one page for one project. So I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to try and find an example because there's lots here. So so guest experts. So for example, this is a page that we send out to people who are joining when they're helping us do some of our training. And we put in some text, we put in links, we put in pictures. This is essentially, this is the person, these are their skills, and it's all scrollable. But that is a page on its own. And the way I would share that is by hitting that link at the top. I could print it, but I will actually want to share that, and it will create me this link here. And I will pass that link out to you guys, and then, or put it on my VLE or on my learning management system, LMS, etc. But anyway, I'm stealing too much of Melissa's time. So Melissa, I'm going to hand back over to you.
No worries. Thank you, Greg.
And I've lost my chat, so I'll grab my chat.
Uh-oh.
There it is. Got it.
Okay. So will you stop sharing?
I just made you host again, Melissa.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Do you see it?
Yes, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me Make sure I've got all my windows in the right place. All right, do you see Illustrator? Yes?
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh goodness, let me move this camera window out of the way. Got in the way. Y'all, I have too many screens. Let me Okay, so we will do this pretty quickly because there's a couple of things I want to show you. What I want to do today is I want to give you tools so you can create something like what you're seeing on screen. And if we have time, I want to show you some other tips and tricks that will help you with your workflow when you go in and create your infographics with Illustrator. So here's one that I've created just recently about children's environmental health. And we have text, we have a background image, we have some icons, and well, you get the idea. It's all right here. So when we're in Illustrator, actually, do we have anyone who's not used Illustrator, period? Maybe, yes, no. Okay. All right. So when we're in Illustrator, when you first load it up, you would have the option to choose a new document. You can also just do File New, and you get all sorts of options here that you can then use. We'll just create one just so you can see what it looks like. There's our new document. Okay, now when you first open this, it's scary because it's blank. What do I do? How do I start? Also, if your Illustrator does not look like mine does, fear not. You have the option to select workspaces. I like working in the Essentials Classic workspace. If you ever, start dragging these kinds of things out here and you're going, everything is messed up, this is not how I wanted it to be, you can come over to Window Workspace and you can reset Essentials Classic and everything will be back the way you wanted it to be. You can also create your own workspace if you'd like to. All right, so let's assume your data is ready to go, you've taken it apart, you know what you're gonna do, but you need a background image. Okay, so where can I go to get a background image? Well, two great places to go get a background image. And this will be also, I linked to this in the Spark page I made for you guys. So I will share that at the end. But Unsplash is a great place to go, and Pexels is another place to go. So we could type in children, which is what I typed in when I was doing my infographic. And then we have all sorts of images here that we can download and actually make use of. Free download right there. And Unsplash is the same thing. Yes, free images. All right, so I have already downloaded one. So what you would do is you would come to File, Place, and it's this one. And you can come in here and drag. I'm gonna zoom out. I want a Mac, so I'm gonna do Command minus, just so I can get a better view of what's happening. And then you can drag that into place to however you want it to be. This is not scaling proportionally right now, but if I hold down my Shift key, it will, which is a beautiful thing. All right, so that's how you could start. You could have a background image. Okay, just for the sake of organization, I'm just gonna move that out of the way. The next thing I wanna show you, and the reason I'm gonna show you this is because when I started using Illustrator, this was so frustrating to me. And it's something as simple as the type tool. But the type tool does two different things. If you just click, it creates what we call a point text. If you click and drag, it creates what we call an area of text. The difference between these two is, I will now increase this, and you see how it's actually increasing the size of the word. If I hold down my Shift key, it'll do it proportionately. But if I come down here to my area of text, if I drag this out, it just increases the size of the area the text can be in. So that was very frustrating to me when I first started using Illustrator because I didn't know how I was doing it. You can also change this by, you know what I think? Ooh, look, I can zoom. All right, so this little circle here on the edge, if you double click it, you can actually change what type it is. But just so you know, that was something that was very frustrating to me when I first started using Illustrator. All right, Remember, if you need to copy something, you can, of course, do the traditional copy and paste. But the other thing you can do is you can hold down the Alt key on the keyboard, you can click and you can drag this and there's a copy. So no need to do the old-fashioned copy and paste, and you can do it this way. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you, because our infographic, wherever it went somewhere. There it is. The other thing we're using here are icons, which is like what Greg showed you earlier in Spark. However, what if I want to have more control of these icons? And what I want to use in Illustrator, I actually want to have vector graphics. So I'm sure everyone who's here today has worked with what we call raster art, which think of like the pictures you have on your computer. And when you blow those up, eventually they become pixelated. That's because they're made of pixels. These icons are actually made of what we call paths. So you can resize them without loss of quality. But if you don't want to build these yourself, where can you go to get them? All right, a good place is what we call Vect-Easy. So I could go in here and type in something like lungs. And the tricky part about this one is you should come over here and select free license, because not everything in here is free, but a lot of good stuff is free. So I could just come in here and I could do a free download, and then you have all these things to use. Now, I've already downloaded some just for sake of time. So it's this one, okay. Now, oh, let me also show you just in case, because sometimes, there we are. Vect-Easy, we'll do. Okay, sometimes you might download this, and an Illustrator file is a .ai file. But when you download these things from Vect-Easy, you may not always get a .ai file. So you may come into this ASMA one and you might go, oh my goodness, well, which one am I supposed to open? It is the SVG one. That stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. So all you would need to do is just right click, open with Adobe Illustrator. Now, you could get lucky and these could already be broken up for you. So you can click on them individually, go make use of them, put them in your infographic. I have also downloaded another one, which is this one right here. By the way, to zoom out, I'm hitting that Command negative or Command minus, and zoom back in, I'm hitting Command plus. If you want to just zoom into that artboard, you can hit Command 0 and it will do that for you. So sometimes it's already broken up for you, but that's not always the case. Maybe you just want this one up here on the left and you're going, well, but that's not, it's selecting everything. Well, all you would need to do is go to Object and Ungroup. And you may have to do that several times. I got lucky that time and I only had to do it once. And now just this is available to me. But you can see that this is actually still made up of separate shapes. So I could continue to just go ungroup. And then I have even more control over these things. And I can come in here and just change the color. You know, I don't, however I'd like. I can even just change the size of just one of the elements in there if I'd like. Okay. Speaking of color, I know I'm going quickly. Is everyone okay? Yes? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just making sure. Okay, speaking of color, I told you earlier that sometimes I struggle with colors just because, well, I just do sometimes. I just don't know what to choose, and then I just get conflicted and I just don't know which one looks good. So if we go to Window and we hit Color Themes, we get this beautiful Adobe color wheel. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. Okay. And what this can help you do is help you pick nice colors. You can come over here and pick a color rule that you'd like. You can move these around. All sorts of different options. And then you can actually come in here and save them. And you can use them for later. The other thing you can do is add it to your swatches so that you can also, like I said, save it for later. The other thing is, yes, Melanie, window and color themes. The other thing is it actually has a bunch of color themes already set for you, which is a beautiful thing. So I could come select this. Let me zoom back out to make that a little bit more. There we go. So if I want just this whole thing to be one color, all I need to do is come over here and I can change the color. And if I've broken it down into further sections, like we did earlier with object and ungroup, I can just come in here and change my color. You can choose most popular. You can also come in here and add this to your swatches. So say you really love this, you can add it to swatches. Let me pull up my swatches. Increase the size of that. So you'll see right underneath here, a new folder is going to pop up as soon as I add it to my swatches. And there it is. Now it's there for later use. This to me is very helpful because I don't have to make a whole lot of decisions on my color, which is nice for me. Yes, Melanie. All I did was click on these three little dots right here, and then I hit add to swatches. If you're ever looking for a window in Illustrator, so Illustrator is a beast of a program. And if you're wanting a window that you're not seeing, all you need to do is come up to window and select the panel you're looking for. So there's all sorts of options happening over here. And you might close one accidentally. This is how you get it back. Okay, let me check. Okay, we're running a little short on time, but that's okay. Let me skip that part and let me do this next. Okay. The other thing I want to show you guys really quick is how to do a clipping mask, because you might have an image and you don't want to use the whole image. You just want a part of it. You don't have to go into Photoshop and crop it and, you know, make it look nice, or, I mean, you can make it look nice, but say you just want this part. All you need to do is use a clipping mask. So I'm going to use my ellipse tool, and if I hold down my Alt key while I'm building this, it'll actually expand from the middle out. If I hold down Shift, it'll do it proportionately. If I put it in the wrong place, I can also hold down my space bar and move it around. That was a lot of keyboard shortcuts. Okay, now I'm going to continue to draw that. And all I want is what's underneath this circle. So when you do a clipping mask, I want you to think of it like binoculars. So you're looking through those binoculars and that's what you're going to see. Your shape that you're putting on top of it are your binoculars. So I will then select everything. I'm going to go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and now I just have that portion. Say you change your mind, no problem. Object, Clipping Mask, Release. You can make a change. So those are clipping masks, which are super helpful, and I use those all the time. Okay, let me see what else really quickly. Let me move on to, okay. What I want to show you now real quick is something that is a super duper handy dandy font. And it is called Amazing Infographic Font. Let me get rid of this, I don't need that. So what you're seeing on screen right now, this was actually built through text. This right here, come on, is actually text. So I will show you. We'll just change it. That is what that is. The Spark page I will share with you here at the end has a link to download this amazing infographic font. And there's also a PDF included in that folder when you download it as a guide to help you out. So all I did was I typed this in whatever font I wanted to, and then I came in here and I found Amazing Infographic Font, and it created that for me. So we can do that very easily ourselves. We'll just create a text box, make sure it's whatever text you want right now, and we could do something like at W2, at W6, and then you would come in here and you would change this colors. Maybe, so what I'm building right now is basically this one up here. And maybe I want that to be, oh, we'll just make it red. And then we can, oops, go away box. There we go. We can just change that to our amazing infographic font. And there we have it. Remember the text situation. That was very helpful in this case. Again, you will have a link to this in the Spark page I'm about to share with you. And you can go in and download this. It's free, but it's a great way to create these shapes in a very quick way. You do have the option, sometimes I forget where things are, so I can just come up here to help and start typing things in. Illustrator does give you the option to come in here and create graphs. So that is totally something you can look at, but we will not get to that right now. The last thing I want to show you, do I have time real quick? Yes, I think I do.
5 minutes.
Okay, I will do this really quickly. The last thing I want to show you real quick is basically the shape builder tool. So maybe you're at the point where you want to start doing your own shapes because you're not finding the icons you want, or you're just wanting something a little bit more elaborate. We all know, or we do now, that we have our basic shapes over here. And if we can use the star tool, and by hitting our up arrow on the keyboard or a down arrow, we can add extra points to that. We can do the same thing with a polygon. We can add sides. Move that out of the way. We can add, or we can take sides away. However, when you're in Illustrator, or when I'm in Illustrator, I have to remind myself that I need to think in shapes. And when you're first starting out, it's actually kind of difficult, or at least it was for me. But once you get your brain to start thinking in shapes, you can make magical things. I'm going to do something very quickly for sake of time, but here I'm going to put, you know, just 3 random circles together. Let's make these different colors just so you can see them better. Come on. All right, so now I have three separate circles. Well, what if I really don't want them to be that way? What if I want them to be one? Sure, I can come up here and hit object and group them together, but that's not really what I want to show you. The shape builder tool is a beautiful tool in Illustrator. Now, before you select the shape builder tool, make sure that you have everything selected. Let me get rid of this because we don't need that. Make sure you have everything selected that you're about to use your shape builder tool on. The shape builder tool is this one over here. And now what that's going to allow me to do you see that as I am hovering over these things, the texture on that is kind of changing? The shape builder tool can let me do this. That's now one shape. The shape builder tool will also allow me to hit Alt and take that out if I really didn't want it. That is now one shape. Let me zoom back out. So that is now one shape. So I made 3 circles and I put them into one. I'm doing this the really quick way. I was going to show you how to build a gear wheel, but we don't have enough time for that right now, unfortunately. But you would basically make 2 circles, and then you could add a bunch of rectangles on the outside, and you could use the shape builder tool to bring that all together and make one shape. You can come in here as well with the direct selection tool and start adjusting this individually. Let me show you one more thing before I forget. Going back to this wonderful infographic font. One of the things you might want to do if you want a little bit more power with this, you would come over here to, oh goodness, where is it at? Yes, create outlines. And what that will do is that will make it not a text anymore. It is going to make it outlines. And you can come in here and actually manipulate this even further, kind of like I did earlier. But remember, it is now no longer a text. But this is also a good thing to do. If you're using a text that you think someone else might not have, when you send the Illustrator file over to them, it's going to show up weird unless you create outlines of that text. So the other thing, last thing, make sure when you're working in Illustrator, you save this as 2 ways. You want to save as an Illustrator file so you can go back and edit it. And then when you're done with it, you also want to export export as, and PNG is great, and you can then export it. I know that was a lot.
Melissa, just quickly, could you just do that save bit again? So saving the AI file saves everything. It saves the layers, all the component parts. And exporting the PNG just gives you the graphic that you can't then sort of work upon if you come back.
Yes. So once you're done, so this for me is done. I still have the AI file just in case I send it to my client or in case I send it to my boss and he says, well, I just really don't like this red banner at the top. I want it to be blue. Because I have the AI file, I can make that change. So you always want to make sure you have that AI file. But again, if you're ready to share, you can just export as, and you can use your PNG. All right. Like I said, I know that was really fast. Let me really quickly share that Spark page with you. So you have that. Go away. There we go. I'm still sparking. I love that it asks you that if you're still sparking. Okay, so that is a Spark page I've put together for you. It contains a little bit of information that we covered at the beginning. It also has a couple of infographic layout cheat sheet, has links to the software that we showed you today, has links to all those resources I showed you, including the Adobe Color Wheel, which is basically just a big version of the little version that I showed you in Illustrator. And then the last thing we want to make sure you're aware of, if you need more Illustrator in your life, because I know this was very fast, come hang out with us on the Adobe Education Exchange. We've got a course that's actually starting. Greg, feel free to interrupt me. Course that's starting in January. And then we also have a resource that'll help you kind of get started with Illustrator.
They're all free. We should mention they're all free. They're aimed at teachers, but you are, I think, teachers. You're honorary teachers. So yeah, come and join us.
Yes, I'd like to just give a plug for Adobe Education Exchange. That's really where I met Greg and Melissa, and the resource is unbelievable. I highly recommend it. I've gotten so much from it. And Greg and Melissa, thank you so much. That was awesome. I really appreciate your time. I guess that's a wrap.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks for showing up, and thanks, Melissa. That was. I know that's a hard ask to look at Illustrator, but that was really useful, I think. So, if there are any questions, we're happy to stick around for a little while. But otherwise, thanks, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Any questions? Awesome. All right. I think we're good. Again, Adobe Education Exchange is where it's at, and we're definitely going to be hearing more from Melissa and Greg throughout the year. We have, I think, 6 more webinars that we are going to be working on, and I do want to get maybe requests because we're looking at what to do with for our web design webinars. So if you have some topics that you would like to hear about, please let me know as quickly as possible so we can get those scheduled. All right. Thank you so much, Melissa and Greg, for your time.
Yeah, Mona is just asking for the handout. Oh, you've given it. Brilliant. Yeah, well done. Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Melanie. Thanks for making contact, and we're looking forward to seeing people after Christmas.
Awesome.
Have a nice holiday.
You too.
Happy holidays.
Stay warm over there.
Yeah. Try, do my best.
Okay. All right. Take care. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.